What's up, nerds? This complete breakdown will be of the MC140 Scythe, one of the most controversial designs in the history of the galaxy far, far away. And it is such a strange way to finish off the glorious MC line. Since the MC30, each iteration has done something unique and excelled at the specialized role it took on. From the capital ship assassin of the MC30s to the Home One as the mobile base for the rebellion, they pushed from an Exodus fleet of repurposed underwater buildings to going toe-to-toe with Star Destroyers and becoming the best of ships out there. In canon and legends, the Mon Calamari did not fall into complacency with the rise of the New Republic. They continued to improve their military like we saw with the MC85, 90, and later 95, eventually becoming larger than the First Order capital ships. And in the original canon, the Mon Cal ships played an enormous role in defeating the Yuuzhan Vong from 25 to 29 ABY. Around 100 years later, for reasons that are still a bit mysterious, Mon Calamari Shipyards decided to take the long, oval, bulbous, and iconic designs and add this thing to the same line. Now, most of the great details come from the Essential Guide to Warfare and the Legacy Era Campaign Guide. We learned that the Scythe-class battlecruiser was the backbone of the Galactic Alliance fleet, which replaced the New Republic Defense Fleet, which was itself created from the success of the MC90 generations earlier. A reorganization that was sparked by the sheer scale of destruction caused in the Yuuzhan Vong War. And the main enemy at this time is the faction known as the Fel Empire, around from 45 to 127 ABY. But the Fel also just called themselves the Galactic Empire. Like with the debated actual date of the fall of the Roman Empire, many saw themselves as continuations of it and just called themselves Romans. The Fel Empire folks saw themselves as Imperials, one unbroken line that was just suffering some major setbacks and reorganization, but never actual total defeat. The main role of this ship was to take on the Pelion-class Star Destroyer, but it was only a third of the size of the Fel creation, so at most 833 meters or about half a mile. And since the blade itself seems to be larger than the body, I'd put it at least around 1,000 just in the blade, which makes the structure between the Victory and the Venator. But it was way quicker and more maneuverable than the Pelion. And a misconception I've seen in a lot of places is that all of these weapons are only in the blade section. The Essential Guide to Warfare does make it seem like that, to be fair, but there's other sources that contradict that, and this typo from the Legacy Era Campaign Guide, page 149, I think it's trying to say that it's not just in the blade. Quote, the leading edge of the blade, as well was the leading edge of the ship's main fuselage, contains densely spaced turbolaser batteries and torpedo tubes. Of course, that doesn't make sense. It shouldn't say was, but as. So the blade's edge, as well as the edge of the main body of the ship, are aligned with the weaponry. And this matches those other sources that say most, not all the weapons are in the blade section. The point of this was to create a so-called cross of fire, which again doesn't make sense if the fire is only coming from the blade part, but coming from the sides and the blade to make a cross shape. So the idea is to make a quick, agile ship with the output of a destroyer and use that speed to get in the perfect position and ideally one-shot an Imperial ship, having all the ion weapons fire, disabling the shields, and in the next fraction of a second, the turbolasers and torpedoes would rip through the hull. Not too far from the design idea of the MC30. And since we're talking space warfare, with the right calculations, you can time these volleys so that you have the deadly cross of fire barraging in waves. And we learned that most ships could not withstand this for long. One more confusion I just want to address to make sure everything's clear. The fire is still all concentrating on a single point. It's just coming from a cross-shape point of fire, but it's not landing like a big T-shape impact site. Those weapons include 3 heavy turbolaser batteries, 6 turbolaser batteries, 2 heavy ion cannon batteries, and 40 proton torpedo tubes, with 60 torpedoes in total with 2 tractor beam projectors just for good measure. This is utterly insane, with the MC75 having what was at the time an absurd 12 proton torpedo launchers. The Venator only had 4, and the ISD had none. To have 40 with more actual torpedoes on board than an entire fleet of previous generations, all following up the barrage of heavy ions and heavy turbos, focused on a single point from a maneuverable, smaller capital ship, I think that's all very impressive. And it may explain why they went with this odd blade configuration. It stands out to me that this blade is so odd, especially in the context of the MC line, to think that the fish folk have been the best engineers of this era by far. When something is so odd and obviously critiquable, then we should be humble and wonder if this ship is the only one that looks like this, and the only one with so many explosives in it. Maybe the design followed that function. Perhaps if something went wrong and there was a chain reaction, it could jettison this whole blade section and pop into hyperspace to live to fight another day. And if this was in combat, the hangars would be empty. The crew gunners are of course screwed, but that just comes with the job. And we see at the very bottom of the blade were the hangars for the 3 squadrons of CF-9 starfighters for 36 in total. as well as 4 shuttles and various assault and supply ships. And it also had docking rings for larger craft along the main body. It also had a Class 0.75 hyperdrive, which we only see in this era for ships that are not personally modded craft, with the only exception being the Acclamator with the ridiculous 0.6 class hyperdrive. Its crew was 5,200 with 1,500 troops and could move 18,000 tons of cargo, which is all on par for a ship of this size. Now, just because I explained some of the confusion and gave some reasons that might make the blade make sense, I still don't like this design. I just think it's not as silly as people are making it out to be, and I want the critique to be as accurate as possible. The whole cross of fire focusing on a single point sounds cool, but most ships do this already. A perfectly fine example of this is the very ship it was designed to destroy, the Pelion. It takes the staggered levels of the ISD to an even more extreme level. All of its guns from the sides, to especially the ones along this ridge, could be concentrated on a single point. And that has been true for most ships out there for millennia. If the fear was that having so many torpedoes on board could lead to a chain reaction, then it's weird that the MC ships are known for having these blister bubble packs and weird protrusions. You would think they could have some external structures that are separated, still staggered and spread all over so that they could focus their fire on a single point, but also with that jettison off technology, then since they would be in separate pods, you have less risk of chain reaction. All 160 torpedoes won't go off at once. And so as for its history, after the catastrophic Yuzhong Vong War, the Galactic Alliance began rethinking its naval doctrine. Initially, enormous dreadnoughts like the Star Defender dominated Alliance fleets, resting on their sheer size and firepower. But the financial burden of maintaining such colossal warships eventually led to a strategic pivot. The Defense Force shifted its focus to smaller, more versatile vessels that still retained heavy armament and advanced armor. This shift birthed the Scythe-class battlecruiser, which officially entered service in 92 ABY, and came out alongside the Shawshore-class frigate and Saber-tooth-class assault vessel. It also inspired the creation of the Tri-Scythe-class frigate, a smaller variant characterized by its triple-blade superstructure, which I'll be covering in the next video. And to the critique of this design, it does somewhat go against the lore because the Scythe-class became the backbone of the Galactic Alliance fleet, playing a central role during the Sith Imperial War, which erupted in 127 ABY. They fought valiantly at the Battle of Kamas, one of the defining battles of this war. Despite the Alliance fleet's defeat, with their numerous Scythe-class cruisers, they were able to execute a skillful fighting retreat, preserving a significant portion of the fleet for future resistance efforts. Even after the Galactic Alliance's formal surrender, the Scythe continued to serve under the banner of the Galactic Alliance Remnant. These ships would play a pivotal role in the Battle of Dak, where Admiral Stasi's flagship, the Indomitable, was intentionally sacrificed to cripple the Mon Calamari Shipyards to deny their use to the Sith Empire. In the aftermath of Dak, surviving Scythe-class cruisers continued their fight against the Sith, providing escort for the stolen Imperius-class Star Destroyer prototype, ensuring its safe passage after its capture. And some would form a key part of Admiral Stasi's joint fleet operations with Emperor Roan's Fel's forces. So the fact that they were so useful to so many different factions proved that this thing must have been very effective, not some Mon Cala mistake. As for behind-the-scenes facts, it was designed by Sean Cook, who made all the ships for the Galactic Alliance and Imperial warships. And the blade section is described as a hammerhead shape, in line with evoking the fish aesthetics of the Mon Calamari creations. And be sure to check out geekygrotto.com. They're amazing alternatives to LEGO. All the parts are compatible with official LEGO products, but because they're not official, they're a lot cheaper and you get a ton more creative options. Everything from tanks, all kinds of military stuff. The Kawaii collection has all kinds of cute stuff, so the range is incredible. Vehicles in general, and the space stuff I find particularly interesting. I gotta pick up one of these soon. Be sure to check them out, 10% off, link down in the description. Please hit that like button, it's the best way to help me out. Comment suggestions, subscribe to see more, and check out these other videos, I'm sure you'll like them. Members get early access to videos, but most important of all, remember, just because something's ugly doesn't mean it was a mistake or that it's not useful. And the Force will be with you, always.